Hi everyone, welcome to this video on how to get started with the Angular Dropdown Tree. The Dropdown Tree component displays a hierarchical list of predefined values, from which you can choose a single value and display it in a text box. In this video, I will show you how to create an Angular app and add the Syncfusion Angular Dropdown Tree component to it. I will also see how to bind JSON and remote data to the component, and how to select multiple items using checkboxes. Let me show you the steps to create an Angular project using the Angular CLI tool. In this demo, I will edit my code using Visual Studio Code, and I will view the output in one of the supported browsers. First, I need to install the Angular CLI on my machine using this command, npm install -g at Angular/CLI. Since I have already installed Angular CLI in my machine, I am skipping this step. Now, let's proceed to create a new Angular project by typing the command ng new project name. I am going to create a project without the routing option, so let me set no here and choose the CSS option to add a CSS style sheet. The project creation has started, and this will create an Angular project along with its dependencies. Once the project is created, I navigate to the newly created project folder. To start using the Syncfusion Angular Dropdown Tree, I need to install the Syncfusion Angular Dropdowns package by using this command, npm install at Syncfusion/ej2 Angular Dropdowns --save. This will install the package along with its dependencies. Alright, the Syncfusion Angular Dropdowns package is installed, and now, my application is ready. The first thing I need to do here is to add the Dropdown Tree component. Before that, I need to register the Syncfusion Angular trial license key. Open this main.ts file and import the register license method from the Syncfusion ej2 base package. Now, register the Angular trial license key using the register license method. From the 2022 Volume 1 release onwards, it is required to register the Syncfusion Angular license key. To see where to generate this trial key, refer to the link in the description below. Okay, let's start to add the Dropdown Tree component. Navigate to the app module file and import the Dropdown Tree module from the Syncfusion ej2 Angular Dropdowns package. Also, register the same within the imports array of the ng module section. Open this app component HTML file, remove the default content, and define the Angular Dropdown Tree component using the EJS Dropdown Tree tag. Next, I populate the data for the Dropdown Tree. Within the app component TS file, define the object variable local data. And assign an array of objects with ID and name fields. Here, I have defined the ID field to set a unique ID for the node, and the name field to display the Dropdown Tree node's text. After that, I define a dataSource fields variable. And assign this object to the dataSource property. The appropriate dataSource fields have to be mapped for this dataSource. So, map the field's ID to value and name to text properties. Now, I will assign this dataSource fields variable to the field's property. This dataSource contains a list of folders, so define a placeholder property with the value, select a folder. I also need to define CSS for the Dropdown Tree. Within the style CSS file, import the material theme. I added dependency CSS references like buttons, lists, pop-ups, navigations, and inputs. Once the changes are done, save this application and run it using the command ngserve. Look at the drop-down tree, it shows the items, as well as the short description. Select a folder. By default, the pop-up width will automatically adjust according to the component input element's width, and the height will be 300 pixels. To set a custom height and width, add the division element with a class attribute. And define the pop-up height to 200 pixels and its width to 250 pixels. And define the pop-up height to 200 pixels and its width to 250 pixels. Within this style CSS file, I define the CSS style for this class element, control section. See now, the pop-up is displayed with custom height and width. Next, I will show how to add subnodes to the main nodes. To do that, within this local data variable, let me add one more field, subchild. This ID field sets a unique ID for the subnode, and name provides the drop-down tree subnode's text to display. Now, assign this subchild field to the child property. When expanding the node, the corresponding subnodes are also displayed. By default, the nodes are collapsed initially. Suppose I want to expand them, then simply set the expanded field to true to expand the local disk C item and its subitems. Look now, the subnodes of the first node are expanded initially. So far, you have seen how to bind local JSON data to display it in a hierarchical drop-down tree. Now, I will show you how to bind data from a remote data source that contains self-referential data. Let's have a look at this self-referential example data to understand its structure. In addition to the usual ID and text fields, you will see objects with two additional fields, parent ID and hasChildren. This hasChildren field indicates whether a parent node has child nodes. The parent ID field maps the appropriate parent node's ID to its child node. Notice here, these three objects have an additional field, parent ID with the value 1, which indicates that they render as child nodes. To bind the remote data, I am going to use Syncfusion's Data Manager library. This data manager acts as a gateway between the drop-down tree and remote data source and uses queries to interact with them. So, as a first step, I need to import the data manager and required adapter from the EJ2 data repository. Then, I define an instance named remote data for the data manager with properties like URL, adapter, and cross-domain. In the URL, I will assign an already available remote service URL, which will retrieve the collection of data tables through the post method. I am going to fetch data from these two entities, employees and orders, and bind them to the Angular dropdown tree. Also, I have set OData v4 adapter here, as the URL is assigned to an existing OData service. The cross-domain option is set to true, to allow the cross-origin domain request. Next, I write individual queries to fetch data for both parent and child nodes. To do that, I define a variable, data query, of type query for the parent node. I fetch the fields, employee ID, first name, and title from the employee table, and map them to the parent data source. Like the parent data, I need to write a query for the child node as well. So, I retrieve the fields, order ID, ship name, and employee ID from the orders table, and map them to the child data source. I also import this query class from the Syncfusion data package to access it. Next, I map the remote data source fields to the appropriate field properties by defining an object named remote data fields and assigning this object to the data source property. I assign the data query variable to the query property. I map the field employee ID to the value property and first name to the text property. Here, I define has children with the value employee ID field to identify whether the nodes have child items. If the has children field contains a value, then that particular object is identified as a parent node. Next, to map the child node fields, I add the child property and assign this object to the data source property. Next, assign the child data query variable to the query property. Map the order ID field from the orders table to the value property, and map the ship name field to the text property. As already seen, the parent node data is retrieved from the employee table to identify the parent to whom the child nodes belong. So, I define the parent ID property for the child node data source and map it to the employee ID field. And finally, I set this remote data source field to the fields property. In the output, the dropdown tree component displays the employee names as parent node items and their respective ship names as their sub-items. Notice here, I can select and display only one item. To select multiple items, define the allow multi-selection property with the value true. See here, I can now select multiple items. Next, I will show you how to enable checkboxes. All I have to do is define the show checkbox property and set its value to true. You can see the component nodes are displayed with checkboxes. Here, I can check any node, and it will be selected and displayed on the UI. Suppose I want to select all the subnodes of the main node, then define an object called enable autocheck and set the autocheck property to true. Now, assign this object to the tree settings property. Look here, when I check the main node, all their subnodes are selected and displayed in the UI. Let me summarize what we accomplished in this video. We have seen how to add the Syncfusion Angular Dropdown Tree to an Angular application and how to bind local and remote data sources to it. We then saw how to enable checkboxes, select and display subnodes, and select multiple nodes at a time. If you would like to peruse a working example, you can download one from the GitHub link shared in the description below. I have also included a link in the description where you can check if you qualify for our community license, which gives you a free license key for our entire Angular suite. If you found this video useful, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.